Hello, Africa, and welcome to AU Talks on AU TV. I'm your host, Sedi Kwashiga. We're coming to you live from the studios of the Association of African Universities here in Accra, Ghana. And today we are discussing a fairly interesting topic, which is the Ghana Nuclear Power Program. I have here with me some guests from the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission who will shed some light on the nuclear power program and nuclear power in general. So please stay tuned. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, I'll introduce them and we dive into the discussion. Please stay tuned. Kampala International University. You are the torch that lights above. In you we see a future bright, and by you the nation gaineth from services pure. The emblem that you trust is the message. Unique in great and truly the giants. With such a height, no success is true. But with such a size, no task is surmountable. Equipped with knowledge, young to us, we go out of your gates with dignity. Let your vision bright and knowledge so above be manifested. Welcome back to AU Talks on AU TV. Today we are discussing Ghana's nuclear power program, and I have here with me some guests from the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, and they are in the person of Dr. Stephen Yamwa, who's the Deputy Director of the Nuclear Power Institute, and we have Dr. Vincent Agbomedegbe,
Agrodemegbe.
and we have Dr. Vincent Agbodemegbe, who is the Manager of Localization and Stakeholder Support Center at the Nuclear Power Institute. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. You're welcome to AD Talks.
Thank you.
Okay, so first things first. What is nuclear energy and how is it created?
Okay, so I'll start. So nuclear energy is a very useful energy that is originated from splitting of atoms, what is called in science as the fission process. It's a form of energy that is clean and very reliable, and many countries have adopted this energy source as a way to ensure sustainability and security of their electricity sector to propel the economic growth. We'll go into details later on, but the energy, as I said, is from the fission reaction that brings out a huge amount of heat in the form of energy, which has to be used to convert from heat energy to electrical energy. Again, we'll go into detail. So, in a nutshell, it's a very clean form of energy, environmentally friendly, and a lot of countries are even using that as a means to ensure that they reduce their carbon footprint, to ensure that the environment is safe for all of us.
I'm sure the process of producing nuclear energy is quite complex, but if you could just give us some brief description of how you produce electricity from the process of nuclear energy.
Okay, if I may handle that. Before I move straight to the second question, nuclear energy comes from nuclear reactions. We can talk about two different types of nuclear reactions. We talk about what the director talked about, that's the fission reaction, which occurs when we split atom. So when the atom is split in two, there's this large amount of heat that is released.
Okay.
And this heat doesn't go to waste, but it is used to actually convert water into steam.
Okay.
And this steam comes to at very high pressures. And as the pressure move along the pipeline, there are turbines, just like what we have in other power plants.
Okay.
There are turbines. So the heat or the steam, the steam that come with that force, turn the turbines.
Okay.
And as the turbines are turning, there is an electric generator attached to the turbines that converts that speed into electrical energy. Then it flows straight to our grid.
Okay.
That's for fission. Okay. But there's another one called fusion.
Okay.
And this fusion, it comes when we combine two smaller atoms together. So there are two types. We have fission that go with the splitting of a larger atom, And when we say splitting of atom, we are referring to the splitting of the nucleus per
Oh,
atom.
the atom. Okay.
Yes. So there's another one to call fusion. The fusion is when we bring two smaller ones together. So those two processes happen.
So how is this different from thermal, solar, hydroelectric, wind generated energy? What's the difference?
Okay, so you see, maybe I will start from the thermal because I think Ghana and many African countries are operating thermal. Now, so there are four processes
Okay.
which is in a cyclic form. So you need a heat source to turn water to steam, and then you need the steam to run in a turbine. Then, as you said, the turbine is coupled to a generator that converts that energy to electrical energy. And then from the turbine, you need another system called condenser
Yeah.
to, you know, reduce the temperature of the water that has been turned to steam, which more or less is a mixture of water and steam, back to liquid. And then you need pump to circulate the water again to absorb the heat.
Okay.
And then the cycle
Continue.
continues. So it's a cyclic process. Now, so the major difference between nuclear, thermal, coal is the process for the heat generation, the source of the heat. How is the heat generated? And for nuclear, that's what you talked about, either through a fission process where you are splitting a bigger material to smaller units, or a fusion process where you are bringing together smaller
So
units to a bigger one. But let me say that the fusion technology to produce electricity out of that technology has not been developed to a commercial level
level.
yet. So now all nuclear power plants operate
The
on
fission.
fission technology. So that is the main difference between nuclear and the thermals and the coal. It's just how the heat
Heat is
is
generated.
produced. Now the other components, the turbines, the generators, the condensers, the pumps, are the
Yeah.
same system of components that you will need for thermal power plants, you need for coal power plants. Now for hydro is a bit different. No, so for hydro you need large volumes of water, and you need to create what you call head or height. So you have the head of the water level and then the tail. And in between that, you connect that with large pipes. So probably if you have seen any hydro plant elsewhere or in Ghana, the Akosongo, you might have seen that orange
Yes.
pipes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those pipes connect the source of the water, which is the head, to another form of turbine, which we call water turbine. So those turbines operate on water, of the medium of the fluid that runs in the turbine is water, as compared to the turbine, the thermal, and then the nuclear,
Which is
which is either running on steam or also on gas. You also have gas turbines
okay.
that you can use gas to absorb the heat and run it through gas turbine. So that is the major difference between nuclear and then the thermals, the coal, and then the hydro. For the renewables, you have either the solar, which I think a lot of people are familiar with, and also either using wind turbines to convert wind to electricity. So these are the major differences between
And,
them.
and indeed, the renewables, they are not dispatchable. They are not
Okay.
base load supply sources of electricity production.
Okay.
But if you see
What does
nuclear,
that mean?
base load means that we produce large
Okay.
quantities of power.
Okay.
But they are not dispatchable. It's not like they are not supplied on demand.
Okay.
Okay, we have to store them by batteries
Oh, okay. Okay.
before we discharge those.
Yeah.
But for nuclear power plants, they are on demand.
Okay.
So that's the data that I wanted to add. Also, the description that my director just said, nuclear power plants are just thermal power plants
Okay.
with what a different source of fuel. So you could say that nuclear power plants are thermal power plants. So those who worked on thermal power plants can gain experience to operate nuclear power plants because there's a change in the source of fuel.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me quickly add my voice to the base load piece. It's very important. In every country you have minimum amount of power in the form of electricity that is required to be available all
At all
time.
times. Okay.
You understand me? So you need, well, that's what we call the base load demand. So you need power plants that can operate continuously to provide this
Minimum requirement.
minimum
Okay.
required energy. And so you take, the renewables for instance. Okay, so when the sun is on, when the wind is blowing, you are generating. But within a short time, the sun can go up, the
Yeah.
wind can
Can
stop,
stop.
and that kind of thing. So you don't have that continuous power being developed. Now, nuclear is a technology that can provide you with continuous amount of power at very high capacity. So, for example, you start a nuclear power plant, you are running it for a period of say 18 to 24 months continuously, okay, at normal operating conditions. And then, of course, you will shut down for about 6 weeks or so, or 6 to 8 weeks to do routine maintenance, and then you start again. So this base load is you need technologies that can provide you with that minimum required level. And then you add the intermittent sources like the renewables to it so that as you move to your peak demand, then these ones will come in to support your base load. So this is very important and most countries are using either nuclear or coal as the base load technology to provide that minimal amount of power that is they require to power their industries to ensure there's economic growth and viability in the country.
Okay. So essentially, all other forms of energy generation besides these renewable ones are more sustainable for because of this base load requirements.
Now, the sustainability can be defined in so many ways. Okay, but here what we are saying is that the renewables are mostly that is the major um, um, negative factor with respect to the renewables, where you do not have continuous availability of the fuel to
Required.
to to to, to generate the power for. Okay, so you need additional form of energy that can give you that minimum required amount of energy that and every country, I mean, it's not a fix.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, if you take any country, Ghana, I mean, this base load keeps increasing. Okay, depends on industrial activity, depends on domestic consumption, and the lifestyle of people. So it's not like it's a constant
Thing
amount of
everywhere.
energy. It keeps increasing or decreasing, depends on the levels of movement, and it's different, from country to country, depends on the consumption of electricity in those countries. So you need this amount of energy. But let me make this point clear. Sustainability, reliability. See, it comes to what we call the resilience of your energy portfolio. Okay, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So you need this, different forms of energy so that the strength and weaknesses are not the same. So they sort of compromise to make sure that you have a very robust and resilient energy portfolio to ensure economic development in your country.
Um, at this point, we'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll look at the status of Ghana's efforts to generate electricity through nuclear energy. So please stay tuned, and we'll be back shortly.
In matters of life and death, you would never leave it to chance. You look for someone dependable, caring, and above all, someone who knows exactly what to do. At Wisconsin International University College, Ghana, we train our students to work in the most basic and in the most sophisticated healthcare environments. With the help of our new state-of-the-art simulators, the first of their kind in Africa, students learn how the human body really works and how it responds to various stimuli and treatments.
The nursing school has been in inception since May 2016, so we are in our second year. What sets us apart is the kind of environment in which the students are being trained, especially in terms of skills training. our skills labs are among the best in the country and in West Africa as a whole.
You got to see a simulated birth here. We can do these births about every 7 to 10 minutes with a setup and things like that. Now, comparable to other simulation centers, obviously there's no other simulation center here in Africa that can offer that. In the States, this is very comparable to the same experience that our students in the States will experience over here.
Don't leave your education to chance. Enroll at Wisconsin now and get world-class training in nursing, community health nursing, and midwifery. Wisconsin International University College, Ghana. Leaders in international education.
Welcome back, Africa. Today we are discussing the Ghana's nuclear power program, and we have with us in the studio some representatives of the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission in the presence of Dr. Stephen Yamwa and Dr. Vincent Agbodemegwe. And Dr. Vincent Agbodemegwe. So, going back to our discussion, what is the status of Ghana's efforts to generate electricity from nuclear energy? How soon can we expect to have some regular power from the nuclear sources?
Yes, works on Ghana's nuclear power program has so much advanced. The whole program has been phased into three. We are following something called the milestone approach, with the IAEA, the National Atomic Energy Agency, has actually developed that newcomer countries who want to actually go with nuclear must pass through that process. So it's about three phases, as I said, and at the end of each of these phases, we say that a milestone is attained. So currently, Ghana is in the first phase of the program. So we must go to phase 2, phase 3. It doesn't mean that until we pass all the requirements of phase 1, we wouldn't move to phase 2. Currently, some of the issues of phase 2 are being handled. But at the end of phase 1, we are supposed to write something called a comprehensive report. This comprehensive report will be submitted to government for government to make decisions on that. So earlier on also, we had a peer review of our program. So we have international experts from all over the world and from the International Atomic Energy Agency came to Ghana, and they review all the issues that we are considering. Indeed, we have about 19 issues to consider, 19 infrastructure issues to consider. So they came to look at each of these infrastructure issues to see how far we have attained. And they give us a number of recommendations and a number of good practices that we have. So for now, what we are doing is to address those recommendations that have been made. And we have even moved far into addressing those. We are even preparing to actually write the comprehensive report and then submit that. So that's how far we have come as far as Ghana's program is concerned.
I have to add you. You see, he talked about the three phases. Nuclear is not, let me say, it's not like any other technology. So you need to have a clear understanding as to what is required of you as a country if you want to go nuclear. So the phases he talked about, I will make it simple to say we have the preparatory phase, okay, and then which is the phase 1, and then the development phase, and the construction phase. Now, what do I mean by preparatory phase? Now, so you want to go nuclear, for example, do you even have a site, or can you get a site to construct the power plant? Nuclear power plant is not, siting a nuclear power plant is not just looking at a vast area and say, oh, this area is good, I can put the power plant there. You need to do a lot of analysis, taking into consideration a host of factors. The water situation, you need a huge volume of water to ensure that you can provide continuous cooling and also to the plant and other systems. Do you even have the human capacity to develop, operate, maintain the plant? Do you have industries in your country that can support the plant? Is there even a government support? Is there even the general public support for the program? So you wouldn't want to start the program and then get to a point and then you realize that, oh, I should have done this. When it happens like that, you are going to run into a host of problems. So you need to have a broader understanding of what the program entails. So as a government, as a country, you say, okay, I want to add nuclear to my generation, but do we understand what it takes to do that? So that is the preparatory phase, the phase one he talked about. And then once there's clear understanding and know-how in terms of how to proceed, then you take the decision to go to the next phase of the program, that is the phase two, where having understudied all the typical infrastructures that are required, knowing their status and how it should be developed to meet the nuclear standard, you now take concrete steps to ensure that you put in measures and systems and facilities in place to develop those infrastructures. So, for example, if you identify that, okay, you need to, prop up your educational system, the tertiary educational system, to ensure that you can produce scientists and engineers that are well, knowledgeable in the area of nuclear science and technology or in thermal generation, then you take the necessary steps to do that. Having in mind how long does it take to train somebody to be qualified to operate the power plant. Not that you have finished the plant construction and then you realize that, look, I don't even have the people to operate the plant. You understand that? So you need to put all these measures in place. And let me end by saying that, Ghana is not the only country that have taken this bold initiative. And I'll talk specifically in the African continent. So far in the whole of Africa, it's only South Africa that are operating nuclear power plant. They have two power plants in their generation mix. But a number of other African countries have also come to the realization that looking into the far distance, into the future, they need to, take steps to ensure that they can be sustainable in terms of their electricity demand. So a number of countries like in the West African sub-region, like Nigeria, and there's also I think Niger. Okay, these countries have also expressed their interest and they are also at various stages of their program. Sudan is also one country, Kenya, Uganda, and of course Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia. All these are countries in the African continent that have also expressed interest in developing a nuclear power program, and they are all following the IEA, that's International Atomic Energy approach that my colleague talked about, to ensure that they develop the systems in a more understandable and having in mind a clear understanding as to what it takes to ensure that you develop the program in a very sustainable way.
There's usually when people hear nuclear power, they think nuclear weapons. Could you, um, for our viewers, explain the differences, if there are, in between generate using nuclear energy to generate electricity and using nuclear energy for these less desirable um, things like nuclear weapons, so that people can really know the difference and understand that nuclear energy for electricity is different, or if there is any difference at all. And any of you could just help us with
Okay,
that.
let me take a first peek at it. You know, all these nuclear power issues to convert to use nuclear to generate electricity actually came out from the earlier use of nuclear as a mean for weapon program.
Okay.
If you remember so well, there is this Atom for Peace issue that the American President Dwight Eisenhower came to talk about, where they saw that they were using nuclear more for destructive purposes than for actually helping the society. So they came out with the idea that with this technology that we use to destroy our people, why don't we use it or channel it to rather make our society? So the expertise at those time that was used for destructive purposes because of weapon production, manufacture or production, were channeled now to a peaceful purpose, where nuclear is used to generate electricity for the benefits of society. So if it's a weapon and electricity, these are two different things. The resources that you need for weapon production are not the same thing that you need for electricity generation. Because for weapon production, we call something critical mass of uranium that you need to have at a particular enriched status before you could produce weapon. But for nuclear power program, although you may have high enrichment, that critical mass you may not attain.
Okay.
So the resources are different. So they are not, although the technologies were diverted from one to the other, the resources need for weapon production is far different from the resources need for electricity generation. And even nowadays, there are a lot of legal regimes that uh, countries that want to embark on nuclear power programs go with. So we must strictly abide by those regimes, or else you know what happens. The international committee will come with you
After you, yeah.
after you to make sure that you do the right thing. Because since then, no one wants to destroy the world with nuclear power, nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
But right now, we want to use nuclear for peaceful applications only.
Let me ask something. You see, nuclear is unfortunate anyway because that is how the technology started, and also unfortunate because we hear more of weapons testing and that kind of thing in the news, but nuclear has wide applications. So now today we are talking about energy. Okay, it has application in health. Okay, so you go to hospital, you take X-rays, you take scan, and I say that it's what MRI,
You know,
MRI, all these things use nuclear technology. So it has application in health, in industry. Okay, um, for example, Ghana Atomic Energy Commission has been providing services to the Ghana gas, for example, when Ghana this for example this West African gas pipeline. For example, I mean, a welder welds two materials. Okay, you are pumping gas or oil through that. You may not be able to see it with your eye with either holes or spots in it, but you can use a nuclear technology to detect all these things and then seal it. From time to time, some of the um, oil companies, the vehicles, come to guide for us to test if there are, leakages and that kind of thing. So it has that also application in agriculture. Okay, in terms of you know solving diseases and coming out with new breeds of varieties of crops. So nuclear has a wide and applications, but of course it can also be used to destroy, and that is the weapon aspect. And before any country embarks on nuclear, you make a commitment that you are using that technology for peaceful purposes. And nuclear is not something that a country you sit in your country and do it without any international interest. Okay, we have what we call, for example, safeguards, which allows international experts to visit your country, announced and unannounced, to come and inspect your facilities to ensure that you are using the technology for peaceful purposes. So there is this international campaign to ensure that countries with that technology, even to use it for non-peaceful purposes, shed the non-peaceful application and then promote the peaceful application. So Ghana is going in for this technology, but mind you, I mean, nuclear technology is not being introduced to Ghana as a new technology. Ghana Atomic Energy Commission was established in the 60s by our first president. And Ghana Atomic Energy Commission has been operating a research reactor. Mind you, it's a research reactor since 1994. Okay, it's a different reactor, not for power production, but for research and for education and training. And Ghana has been applying nuclear technology in health, in mining, in agriculture over the years. So what we are doing now is to move to a step further to ensure that we can also benefit from the vast uh, benefits that one gets from nuclear power in terms of electricity production. So you are really going in for nuclear as a technology to provide us with reliable electric power and not for any other purpose.
Yeah, with the mention of the research reactor we had, recently we have changed the core of our research reactor. That's purposely to ensure that there's what we call what my boss talked about earlier about the weapon production. We don't have such high grade of uranium in our research reactors. So earlier on, the research that we had was using a very highly enriched uranium, but now it has been reduced to very low enriched uranium, so that we don't have or attain that resource need for weapon production or whatever that is. Even that will not even give you the critical mass. So there are efforts going around to ensure that the weapon use or application of nuclear is dealt with.
Um, Wrapping up, the how will we deal with the nuclear waste that will be generated through this process, and what other measures are being put in place or can be put in place to ensure that our nuclear plants, should they come online, will be operated safely?
Okay. So again, it's unfortunate when people relate nuclear waste to the fact that as a country we cannot manage our municipal waste. The two are completely different. And let me say that with over 60 years of nuclear power production all over the world, nuclear waste has never become a problem because the technology exists to manage and dispose of the waste. Now, there are various streams of waste. Okay, about 5 or 6 levels depends on the amount of radioactive in the waste. The volume is small. The compared to even the photos. Okay, the volume is small and it is what do you call it, confined. So the major waste that comes out, and I'm using the waste you know with caution here. The major waste that comes out is the used fuel. Now, when you have run the fuel in the reactor for some time, it gets depleted, so you bring it out. Now, you can consider that as a waste, which means you now have to dispose of it permanently, or you can also consider that as a resource because you can recycle that used fuel to get fresh fuel out of that. In that process, you also minimize the waste out of that. So these used fuels are, stored in ponds at the reactor site. Then the other streams of waste that might, for example, come as a result of having used globes, for instance, to hold a nuclear material that has some radioactive, substance in it. But mind you, all these materials, they have their half lives. So some of them die out in seconds, in minutes, in days, in months. But there are others that will also, run in years before they are, and you need to provide a disposal facility for that. So most countries, as of now, are still storing these useful in ponds at reactor sites. Now, I think one or two countries, if my memory serves me right, Norway or Sweden, they have come out with what you call a geological disposal, where you once you consider the useful as a waste, then it means the decision is that you want to bury the waste permanently. You don't want to have access to it anymore. And the technology is to bury it in a geological setting beneath the earth crust. So these technologies exist. The other waste streams that I talked about are very minimal, that you don't need any high tech technology to dispose of. Maybe my colleague will.
Yeah. So my boss talk about the volumes. If we talk about waste or spent fuel, it's just the fuel that we have used in the reactor for a long time. And now there are a lot of radionuclides produced, and therefore the concentration of the useful materials in it have reduced. So when we take that used fuel, typically we can say that it's made of 96% uranium, okay, 1% plutonium, and 3% of the other nuclides that are produced. 3%. Okay. But if you look at the fuel loading, maybe for a reactor, a fuel assembly can be like 500 kilograms. Okay, that's the fuel, how do you call it? The fuel bundle element. Can be 500 kilograms. So we are talking about very small volumes. But the issue now is the radioactivity content of it. That's what I'm about to talk about. The various streams and how they can be protected. But the good thing is that at the end of all this, the last product of uranium is not radioactive, it's lead.
Okay.
The very last product of uranium is lead. But it's only that it takes a long time to transform itself to lead. So keeping this small material under very rigorous regulatory regime, we don't just keep it anyhow, but there are regimes that we have to follow, there are regulations that we have to follow. It's not like throwing rubbish on the streets. So this thing always that we cannot manage our domestic, so we could not manage nuclear. I think it's nowhere. Those who make those statements don't even talk about the waste we have from renewable. Look at the batteries. These ones are easy, they get easily exhausted. A lot of them. Even the solar panels, they don't talk about those ones. If you look at I think the heap of waste that we get from these electronics, they are all there for us to see. They are not able to treat them. But you will not find nuclear material on a street like this. Never. Yes. So that's what we're talking about. We are not talking about this thing. So people who made those arguments should come down to our level to understand what we are talking about.
To be honest, let's come down, from nuclear power to other applications. Okay, I mentioned that Ghana we are using nuclear applications and all that. So a number of these radioactive materials, because in the mining industry and the oil and gas industries, they need these things. You even when the container, okay, that comes with the material, you have to account for it when it is used. So, and we have the Radiation Protection Institute and the Nuclear Waste Management Center at GAIC. That before any radioactive material comes to the country, you can't just import any radioactive material to the country. You need to have informed your regulator to get a license or permit to import that, and then when it comes to the country, the regulator tracks the usage where it is going and that kind of thing. And then when you have used it, as I said, even the empty container that the material came with, you need to account for it. And the commission, the center goes and collect all these things and make sure it is properly disposed. So nuclear material is not like anything that like you have drunk sachet water and then you just throw it out anyhow. So there are technology to ensure that these things can be managed, and it's actually not a rocket science technology. The system exists, and that is what all the other countries are using. You also talked about measures to ensure that the plant is operational. To be honest with you, see, notwithstanding the Chernobyl accident, notwithstanding the Fukushima accident, nuclear power plant remains one of the safest technologies in the energy sector. But of course, accidents do happen. And that is one major difference between scientists, engineers on one side, and probably, excuse my language, and maybe lawyers, financial people on the other side. When some of these things happen, it provides the opportunity for scientists, for engineers to understand the system and then take measures to ensure that it never happens. You understand? And I always ask people, okay, may their soul rest in peace. Not long ago, we all heard about the Kenya this thing. How many people died? But is it that okay? Because of that, you will not fly again? You understand that? And the aviation industry is one of the safest when it comes to transportation. Probably is the safest. But in the event of accident, the casualties is huge. But mind you, and you can research in the energy industry, nuclear, even the Fukushima, people mix the earthquake and the tsunami incident with the nuclear power plant incident. The two are not the same. The two are different. What happened? There was an earthquake, and then afterwards there was a tsunami that affected the nuclear facility. The death the distractions, the damage that we all saw on TV were the direct result of the earthquake and the tsunami, not the power plant. In fact, it is on record that there has not been any death as a result of radiological exposure from the Fukushima accident. But what it means is that the Japanese government, the operator of the facility, are putting in place measures to ensure that in the event of such incident, it will be activated. And that is what we call emergency preparedness response plan.
Okay.
So you don't wait for the thing to happen before you think about what can I do to solve it. But you anticipate possible scenarios that can happen, and then you put in systems to make sure that if that happens, it will work. And you may put in the systems today. You are running the plant, nuclear power plant. Okay, so you license it, you are operating for 60 years. So you put in measures and systems. You are running a plant for 60 years. Maybe the incident might happen in the 59th year. Does that mean you are waiting for the thing because you put in the systems, you wait for the thing to happen before you trigger? What is the probability that it will trigger? So from time to time, you do what we call these scenarios, trigger simulation. And these are that even at Atomic Energy Commission, from time to time, we do that with our small unit. So the emergency preparedness response plan, takes into account all possible things that could happen and make sure you have planned for it and test it from time to time to ensure that when it is called upon, it will be it can be relied on to address whatever situation that will come.
This has been a very insightful conversation. But finally, if you have any closing remarks that you'd like to make, now's the time. Now's the chance to make them, and then we can wrap up on the discussion.
Okay, so I'll start. So first of all, um, we are not promoting nuclear to compete with other sources of energy. Rather, we are promoting nuclear to ensure that our energy sector is more robust and resilient. Let me go back to the 1966 when Nkrumah was overthrown. And the government then invited a British scientist to come and review the project that Nkrumah has started. And the scientist, after reviewing and his report, made a very important statement, which is very interesting. Now, he said that, don't forget that that was also the time that the country has also commissioned the Akosombo hydroelectric project. So there was, at that time, the demand was very small, and then the Akosombo was such a huge plant that was even producing in excess. So one of his comments is that, Ghana, for the purpose of power or electricity, will not need nuclear power in view of the Akosombo hydroelectric project for the next 20 years. That was very true for the next 20 years. But unfortunately, probably for whatever reason, the project was abandoned. Now, what probably the people didn't understand is that it doesn't take 3 years to build a nuclear power plant. It doesn't take 5 years, it doesn't take 10 years. Even with experience and with money and all stuff, you need a period of between 10 to 15 years. Because I talked about having to make sure you have a clear understanding of what it is. So the concerns of people are legitimate. The fear of people are legitimate. But that is why we have to plan and ensure that we put in measures and systems in place so that these concerns will be addressed. The concerns of people cannot be addressed by sitting down and waiting for the next 20 years. We will wait for the next 20 years and we haven't taken any step and the situation will be the same. So the nuclear is not coming on next year. We need to plan. So that is the concept. You plan, know what has to be done, and then you take the steps to do it. So finally, the nuclear is not competing with any source. it is to add to our energy generation source. And then studies have actually been done. Our hydro resource is limited. We do not have any large hydro to rely upon anymore. After Akosombo, Pon, and we've struck oil. That's good. But you see, we should be careful. Our oil compared to Nigeria, even for instance, or UAE, we can't even compare. The volumes are not comparable. But UAE, as we speak now, are constructing 4 nuclear power plants with all their oil. So we see, yes, we struck oil, we struck gas, it's good, but those things are not unlimited. And there are studies from Ghana Gas Master Plan that even indicate that unless we struck new fields, our current reserve will start declining around 2028, 2029, 30 thereabout. So yeah, it's not far away. So you see, we need to think ahead and not wait for things to happen before. It then becomes a rush of kind of thing decision that we
Just like
take,
what you
and
did for
then
Tema. Yes.
yeah, and then so nuclear requires long-term planning. So all the concerns, and we engaging a lot of people and doing a lot of education, including what AAU TV has also offered us. And we hope that probably this will not be the last
end of it.
of such engagement, so that we can also reach out to your audience to make sure we provide the needed education for all of us.
Okay, my brother, Ghana is among, or is the country that have the highest tariff, the whole of West Africa, or Africa, if I may be right. So this tariff is not doing any good to our industries. Our industries are not growing. If the industries don't grow and become viable, how will the job come? If you are playing the game this way, our industries will not grow, and we'll be finding ways to employ people that is not sustainable. Energy is the blood for industrialization. There are a lot of things that we have outlined that we want to do, a lot of very beautiful things. But where is the energy? Energy is not there. And we're not talking about just energy. We're talking about a stable and affordable supply of energy. You see, you cannot tell us that we are putting renewable online for us to run our industries. That is a chunk of money. We cannot even, what we are running now, even go higher. So we need affordable, stable supply of electricity for industry growth, for job opportunities, that our people can be happy. Thank you.
Um, uh, we've come to the end of another edition of AU Talks on AUTV. Today we're discussing nuclear energy, and we're privileged to have Dr. Stephen Yamwa, the Deputy Director of the Nuclear Power Institute of the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, and Dr. Vincent Agbo Demegbe, Manager of Localization and Stakeholder Support Center at the Nuclear Power Institute. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on AU Talks.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Viewers, we hope you've learned something interesting from the discussion, and please stay tuned to more programming on AU TV. Thank you.